So welcome to another episode of Is This Adulthood? I'm Ryan Durgy.
And I'm Katie Jones.
And we're here with a good friend of mine, Harris Bundy, who is, I guess you could say, maybe a real estate tycoon or getting there in Toronto. He's had 4 years experience and just an all-around awesome guy. And I've known Harris for years. And in fact, I've been trying to get him on The Bachelor or Bachelorette as a contestant for years. I actually applied for him the other day because, I mean, 6'3", good looking, deep voice, mama's boy, ex almost pro golfer.
Did you know about this?
Well, he mentioned it before, maybe last year. And then it came up in our conversation a couple days or yesterday, actually. And he was hounding me for information, date of birth and address. And, and I finally caved and I said, okay,
Harris is like, what?
Well, I think that I told Ryan, my sister actually, she submitted an application for me years ago and I had no idea about it. And she actually told me on my birthday in June, she was like, hey, Harris, just give me a heads up. If you get a call from some, I don't even know who hosts it, but if you get a call, don't be too nervous. I submitted a form for you. And I was like, Hannah, what the hell are you doing? So, so Ryan submitted one for me yesterday. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh, well, best of luck to you, Harris.
Well, thanks. I don't even know if I don't think I'd want to go anyways, but Ryan's twisted my arm and I eventually caved.
Well, hey, I think the fact that you're an eligible bachelor in Toronto could be its whole episode. The reason why we brought you on was to talk to you about real estate during, the pandemic. And also as a millennial, a lot of our listeners are in that demographic. How do you even start to think about buying property within a city like Toronto? So maybe you can start by telling us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to real estate in the first place.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess there's a couple of pieces to that question there. So to start off, how I got into the business was a really good friend of mine, Stuart Skoglund. We played golf together growing up, and he kept getting in my ear about it. And his mom actually spoke to me about it. His mom owns Remax Hallmark, which is one of it's the largest independent Remax brokerage in North America. And so he's hugely connected into the real estate world. And anyways, his mom kind of spoke to me about it when I was a kid and said, hey, I want you to do this with my son, Stu. And, and things kind of progressed. And I went to Western where I met you, and then I studied political science. I wanted to pursue a career in golf. And then when I kind of said there's too many unknowns and I just don't want to feel like I'm getting lapped. I ended up staying an extra year in high school to get my grades up and have a higher SAT to get down to the States. And then I felt like I was lapped. So I decided I was going to jump right in. And in my final year of university, I not only did my courses at university, I also did my real estate courses. So by the time that I was finished school, I was ready to roll. I hit the pavement running. So that's kind of how I got into it, was just, my buddy Stu and his mother kind of giving me a hard time saying, let's go. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a tough road to get going. It's tough sledding to start. I don't know how people do it when they've got kids and they've got a mortgage and they've just been let go from their job and they're thinking, hey, I'm going to go hit this, because it takes quite a while to build up a book and to, it's all commission. So, it's sink or swim. So it's tough sledding your first few years, but once you really get a good understanding of the business and you've got a good book and you're doing all the right things to generate revenue, then it can be a really great lifestyle. In today's world, in the pandemic era, we can start to roll into that. It's the market it's too early to know what's really going to happen. I think a few weeks ago, people were panic selling. It's almost like the financial markets. When they start to see the dip, everyone pulls out, and that's what creates the crash. Yeah. And I saw that the panic sells were happening a lot more frequently, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. The market's kind of coming back in the downtown core. The condo market is a little bit softer. People are taking, quote unquote, a bit of a haircut on their condo deals, their condo sales. They're taking a bit of a reduced price. But in the residential markets like Leslieville and the Beach and Etobicoke, Parkdale, they're still pretty strong. They're still pretty active. The demand was just so strong before this pandemic hit. that the buyers are they're back out there, and a lot of the, in my opinion, I think that the burbs are going to be affected the most. That area is a little bit more volatile. The prices for subdivision homes out in Oshawa, in my opinion, should be $1 million. I think the land value is it's just too little to make to come up with an evaluation of, let's say, $1 million for a 3,000 square foot house. Once again, this is all opinionated stuff. It's all driven by supply and demand. But anyways, I think that they're a little bit more vulnerable to a correction in the suburbs. But yeah, that's what we're seeing in today. It's a bit of a compression in the pricing, but it's not. We're not taking a dive. People are still coming out to buy houses.
Now, would you say that, because there's kind of a lot of conversation about how our age demographic, millennials, it's becoming almost impossible at the thought of owning a home, before your 30s or even your early 30s, whereas, the generation before us, that was much more feasible. Do you think that that's going to change? The market's going to be forced to change, or buying is just going to become a thing of the past and renting more common? Or is there kind of no going back once you've continued past that?
It's a good question. My only argument to say that it's sure, the landscape is different than from our parents' landscape, but the only way to draw some comparisons is in interest rates. They were working with 18 to 20% interest rates on their mortgages. We're working with 2.5%. So the cost to hold that mortgage was substantially higher than it is in today's world, it is in today's world. So that's the only thing that you could say would be to draw some comparisons between then and now. Of course, prices are they're extremely high. Since 2016, they've just been booming. And that's when I got into the business. Since I've been in the business, I've only seen a very robust seller's market. I've never seen a buyer's market where buyers have power when they go to negotiate a deal. They don't often have a leg to stand on.
Interesting.
And that's since I got into the market, which was 2016, where we really saw house prices start to really skyrocket. What I did write an article for my network, and if anybody wants to hear my opinion, I send out a monthly newsletter with just some really rough opinionated pieces. It's almost like I'm speaking to my listeners. I'm not actually writing something like university. I'm not writing like a very long essay. This is just very loose and it just gives you some perspective on what I'm seeing in the marketplace now. And I wrote about how
I love them.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, people really
they're great.
They just like to hear that you don't need to be a rocket science to sell real estate. You just need to actually pay attention to the market and follow the trends and be very active in what's happening around you. And so anyways, I wrote this piece about how it's kind of a nasty piece, because the moral of the story is we won't have enough money to create a down payment. I mean, the prices are just going away from us way too quickly. For millennials, we're only making, what's appreciation last year, or inflation, 1.8%. So let's just say that, for argument's sake, incomes are increasing at 1.8% year over year. Okay. But for argument's sake, I'm not sure if that's the actual case, but I can tell you for a fact, they're not climbing at the same rate of real estate appreciation. Real estate's getting way more expensive, and the gap is increasingly getting further away from everybody. So I wrote a piece saying essentially that parents that have been sitting on property that they bought for $200,000 and now it's worth $2 million, that's all liquid. That's all equitable. It's all, you can pull money against that. So what I'm trying to get to is that parents need to help their kids out, because eventually that money that they're sitting on, the kids are going to get anyway in a negative. Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So either you're going to want your kids to be around you, and you want to be a grandparent, and you want to watch their kids develop and do the whole thing there and have them close to you, or they can go buy a house in Clarington or Bowmanville because they can afford to buy out there, but you're never going to see your kids.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean by that?
I never thought about it like that. Yeah.
So it's yeah.
In terms of your article, I will definitely, or you said monthly articles?
Yeah.
I will definitely give those a read and send them to some of my friends, because I think that, I mean, especially if you maybe not so good with numbers, the whole kind of real estate, buying houses, saving mortgages can be a little bit of a daunting conversation and overwhelming. So
Mm-hmm.
I know personally, I would rather read an article that just sounds like someone who knows what they're talking about talking to me, instead of this lengthy, confusing, overwhelming,
Right.
body of text that just kind of seems like I'm lost. Now I feel even more overwhelmed than I was before. I'm going to close the book,
Totally.
But just speaking about how you were saying how just prices are skyrocketing so much. I have a few friends with daughters, and a lot of them that had, plans on buying a home and, even hopefully having their parents help them. And it just seemed like, although they've lived at home with their parents for a while and they've been able to save money, it's starting to become so overwhelming that everything is so expensive now that unless they're okay with living at home until like their early 30s,
Yeah.
which a lot of people aren't. Okay, if I have to move home for a couple years, so be it. But I do not want to spend 8 years, under my parents' roof, especially if they have young kids, or so they're kind of just dropping out of it and renting.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking for them because that's not what they were striving to do. But look, I'm not going to just spend my entire 20s and early 30s living at home. Maybe I need to put buying a house on the back burner, and they're going to renting, which I think is so sad, because when we grew up, like, if you wanted a house, you maybe had to move a little bit north. I grew up in Stouffville, again, like near Newmarket,
Yep.
but not like, oh, you've got to go all the way to Innisfil where you don't know a single soul, because that's the only possible way you could ever own a home. It just seems impossible now.
Yeah. And Kate, have you seen the prices of subdivision homes in Innisfil
No,
lately?
I haven't. I just
You're not, people aren't really close to buying that either right now.
Yeah,
Young
and
Oh,
people,
wow.
that's the thing. I mean, yeah, when I grew up in Stouffville, we moved there when I was 4, from Bayview and Eglinton, and it was Slowville, and everybody had like farm fields, and there was nothing to do. And I mean, there really isn't much to do now. There's just a lot of chain restaurants, but they're $1 million homes.
yeah.
And it's just like, okay, we all need to save, and the world's gonna get expensive as time goes on. Inflation isn't going anywhere, but when is it gonna stop? Like, is it just gonna be
Yeah.
$4,500 a month to live in Toronto in a couple years? Like, where is there kind of we need to be realistic, because people need roofs over
Yeah.
their heads.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and I can empathize with that, because currently I do rent, but I've managed to, my rent is really inexpensive in comparison to what other people are paying in the area, because I've got 2 other roommates with me. I'm living with a couple. So when we split the rent down, it's feasible. I can save enough. I feel like I can, if I'm making a good chunk of money, then I can outrace the market, I guess you could say. I can outrace the increase curve. So I mean, like, that's the only way to do it, is if you live with multiple people, to rent downtown. But what I will say about your previous point about where does this thing end? Well, my opinion is this: is that, I mean, everyone compares us to the New York City, or the New York City of the North. Like, that's what everyone kind of refers to us as. But ultimately, our tax structure is dramatically different. We're not a socialist country, but we're definitely on the left side of the spectrum compared to the U.S. So this tax structure in the U.S. is dramatically different. Incomes in New York City are also dramatically different. So I think that there's got to be, and I'm not a numbers guy, like, I'm really not. I would love to have somebody break it down for me to find out what the ratios would be. I mean, let's say we've got to be getting to a certain cap in what renters can pay, because right now, pre-construction condos downtown, I've seen them trade for up to $1,800 a foot. So to buy a condo at $1,800 a foot, I mean, we can do the math quickly.
A square foot.
$1,800 per square foot. So that's times that by, let's say it's a studio, 400 square feet. That's going to cost you $720,000 to buy
For a studio.
for a 400 square foot studio at 1,800 square feet. That doesn't even cover like the taxes and levies that could be brought against you on the closing date. But that's a totally other topic. But anyways, there's got to be a plateau in what renters and millennials can pay
Yeah.
Just in general. I mean, how does it keep going away? Because if you go buy a pre-construction condo downtown, you're not going to be cash flow positive when you have a renter in there. You're not going to be making money. You're going to lose money every month. If you got a studio condo downtown, it's going to cost you $3,000 a month to mortgage, and your renter is going to pay you $2,000 a month. So why, I guess people are willing to take the risk thinking that this asset is going to appreciate so dramatically that I'll make up the difference when I sell it. If that makes any sense.
And again, you have to have that money going into it. Like anything, when you're investing, you have to be willing to lose it. But
and people are.
I don't know. I find it sad.
I agree. And who knows what happens here? I mean, like we are so early on in this. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen here. I mean, I do a lot of work on the retail leasing side, a lot of restaurants, a lot of cafes, mostly in the East End, like storefronts. They're in really tough shape. I mean, they're handcuffed. It's going to be really tough for them to make a go at this right now. I mean, the cost to rent, it's really, really difficult. And the landlords, I mean, people think that they're making all this money, and it's sure they might have been, but not anymore, because no tenants are going to take those spaces.
Wow.
Absolutely. My parents own a restaurant. If you're ever back up at your cousin's place, it's on Highway 48. It's called the Coach House Pub.
Okay.
But yeah, same thing. They just rent from the landlord. There's, I believe, five different stores in that plaza. But again, not being able to pack a bar like you used to, and we have a very strong like regular client base.
Sure.
So, taking away how many people can enter, and then even with the premise of sitting at a table, it's one thing if you social distance around a bar, but sitting at a table, you're already taking away that social distance. And it's going to be hard for everybody going forward with what's happened during this pandemic. So yeah, it's going to affect us all. Yeah. And then you add like the cost of living and the cost of renting, and the probability that, buying a home seems, so far away now, and it already seemed far away before. It's scary times right now.
And so I was a couple of years ago, I read this article about this couple that was living downtown Toronto. They essentially said, we are going to rent this studio apartment. We're going to rent it $1,800 a month. So each of us are going to spend $900 a month. Okay. If they had gone out and bought the same thing, their mortgage would have been around $2,800 or $3,200 a month, something in there. So what they did is they took the difference and they started to invest that in the markets, the financial markets. So instead of spending $3,000 a month on your mortgage, you're spending $2,000 on rent, but you take that $1,000 difference and you start investing it. So you're still living like, so that's the only way that they've decided to do this. Like that, they're not going to catch the real estate. They didn't catch the real estate curve. Like they did not catch the appreciation in real estate downtown. There's no asset, in my opinion. Well, I can't even make that claim because I don't know, but there's no way that any sort of just standardized, like a mutual fund or anything like that, that's simple and easy is going to be able to increase at the same rate that real estate did in Toronto over these last 4 years.
Wow.
But that's how they did it, or are doing it.
It's interesting because, I mean, even in that situation, being in a studio with two people is going to feel a bit crowded, but I'm guessing that they're doing that for that reason, to be able to invest the other money that maybe they would have put even towards a mortgage or even renting a 1-bedroom. And that brings me to a question about, Katie and I love talking about love and dating on this podcast. So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up, but I really think as a single person, and you can relate, Harris, being a single eligible bachelor here in the city, but I almost feel like it is so valuable to be in a relationship for all the relationship things, but also as far as living in Toronto or purchasing, because how can you do it on a single income? Yeah. I mean, unless you're in a certain type of role, for most people, you need the dual income now to be able to even consider purchasing.
Without a doubt. It's, in my opinion, it's, you're right. It's a little bit easier. It's definitely a little bit easier. Yeah, that streams out to all different like sectors of that as well. Like, it definitely is a little bit easier to have two incomes and one property and one roof over your head. versus having one and being really stretched and leveraged. And so that's, I mean, if we can tie this back into real estate, into what's coming, you might see a correction downtown. You're going to see a correction outside, especially in the condo market. And we don't know how significant it's going to be just yet, but people are going to be over leveraged from this. They're going to have assets that are going to be depreciating in value, and they're going to have to sell off some of their portfolio. So you're going to end up seeing some condos downtown, some property. It's going to end up, it might drop a little bit. I mean, right in last week's numbers, we did see, we saw demand drop dramatically, and we saw prices, final numbers, they're not down by 10%. They might be down by, let's say, 5%. But that's in the first 8 weeks of this pandemic, that's pretty significant. I mean, that's great. I mean, for young people like us, that's fantastic. We want to see this.
Yeah.
But it just trickles into so many other aspects of the economy, and I have no idea what's going to come. And if we open this up too early and the second wave hits and really takes a stranglehold on our societal norms and that affects our economy, it's really anybody's guess as to where this thing is going. And that's why, like, when these, when people, some of my friends that are involved in the finance world, it's like, I don't know how they advise their clients right now, because I don't think anybody has any idea what's happening here, like the grand global scheme of things, how it's going to affect everybody. I just don't think that they do. So
absolutely. And I mean, what's going on right now, it changes dramatically every single day. I mean, right now they say we're starting to flatten the curve so stores can slowly start to open, which before we know it, it could be possible that we're all shut down again. Like, it really does change so much every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I just wanted to ask you a question, Harris, just based on your own personal experience, just because we have lots of different listeners with different interests. If anybody was looking to get into real estate, what do you think are some good qualities or characteristics that you would need in order to be successful in this kind of career?
You got to be a self-starter. That's it. You got to be willing to invest in yourself and take risks. And, that's when I was mentioned it earlier, having kids and a mortgage and taking the risk, it's a huge plunge for people like that. I mean, I was lucky enough to get in at such a young age where I didn't have any overhead. Like, my thought was, do I have $50 in my pocket to go downtown and hang out with the fellas? Like, that was it. Like, it's not, I don't have a big mortgage, anything like that. So you've got to be a self-starter. You got to get up in the morning and develop a routine and put systems in place that really are effective. And I mean, that's the grassroots level of what you need, is to be a self-starter. I mean, it doesn't hurt to be able to, I mean, you got to be able to, if you like being on the phone, you can do it. I mean, that totally works. Like, I haven't been able to, like, I've sold one property since the pandemic started. One of my properties, another property, didn't close because of the pandemic, which is totally bizarre. But I've just been making phone calls. I've just got my database and I just call because, and I'm not even trying to sell them anything because I don't have anything to sell. I'm just calling to see how everybody's doing. And then it's just a nice way to get in touch with people. And the idea in real estate is, if you can be, this is my opinion again, but if you can be at the top of people's minds when they think of real estate, they see a condo, they think of Harris Bundy. They see a house, they think Harris Bundy. You're going to be, in all likelihood, you're going to be successful at it. It's just about doing those small things to be at the top of people's mind without looking like a pushy sales guy, because that's not me. That's definitely not who I want to be or be portrayed as. I don't think that's who I am. And is it across the board that it is just strictly commission? There's no base salary? Yeah, pretty much. That must be overwhelming, especially during times like this, you got to budget really well. And I mean, for me, like, I've just been living like I've been making, like a normal salary. If I did pretty well last year, I had a great year. I finished at Royal LePage. I finished in the top 5% in Canada, which was huge. Congrats. Yeah, thanks. It was fantastic. Congratulations. Thank you. I really appreciate that. But I didn't go spend my money. Like, I just put it away. Like, I'm not like Ryan. You know me from university. Like, there's no lavish stuff in my world. Like, I'm pretty low key. I wear sweatpants, when I'm off the clock, and like, it's it's, you just got to be really good with budgeting and not. don't be over leveraged. Like some of my mortgage broker friends that like they'll see a guy that makes 400,000, but he spends 450. And it's just like, what are you doing, man? Like there's something really nice about having, just almost like Warren Buffett style, drive an old Cadillac, but you put a lot of money away and, you live kind of stress free. Like that's in my world, that would be fantastic. At the end of the day, that's all I'm kind of looking for.
No, absolutely.
What advice would you have for people that are looking to, start saving towards purchasing a property?
What advice can I give? I Ryan, I don't know, man. Like the cost of living in Toronto is just so high. I would just say, like, do your best to find someone you want to live with, that you guys are you can tolerate each other, and everyone's, you can develop your patience skills, and just try and put as much of it as away. I mean, I really do think though that parents are going to need to help, and like I said, like what you can do is you can just say, Mom, Dad, I need, you're sitting on $1.5 million that's just sitting there. Your mortgage has been paid off. Can I have 300,000? And whatever is, it sounds like a lot of money, which it absolutely is. But if they have to pull like a line of credit or some equity out against their home, that interest rate's really low. So why not just say, Mom, Dad, can I borrow the 300,000 to buy a house? And then I will obviously pay you back that $300,000 like a mortgage. But I'm going to also give you the interest on what you've had to take out. So I just think that parents are really going to need to help their kids come up with down payments, because it's almost impossible. It really is. I don't know how, I really don't know how young people, anyone that's born later than 1995 is going to be able to do it.
It's tough.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are people that, will receive great inheritances or, have just grown up in a very wealthy family, but those are few and far between. And, I can be entry level at a great job that in, 10 years, I'll be making great money or whatever the scenario is, but I don't want to live at home till I'm 35, just so I can buy somewhere. So yeah, I think if not everyone's going to have that situation where their parents can help, but again, their generation came from when homes were much more feasible. So totally.
And here's actually a really cool point that I was listening to this webinar with I think it was the president of RioCan, and RioCan's a big real estate conglomerate that owns mall, like I think that they might own Yorkville Mall, like they own malls and they own big office buildings downtown. And what he pretty much alluded to was, if let's just say that office space is not required anymore, okay, like let's just say you don't need to go downtown to work, that anyone that's working in downtown Toronto, they kind of have to live within like 100-kilometer radius on like the far end to get into Toronto to work every day. But now let's say you don't need to do that. You can go work from home. That opens up the talent pool to all of these employers to across the globe. Right. So like that, so who needs to say that you need to live in Toronto? I mean, sure, it's fun, it's exciting, there's lots of stuff to do, but I mean, the cost to live is just so damn high. And if you can get a job that, let's just say it's based out of San Francisco, but you can do it in Innisfil and it pays you double, then I mean, that sounds pretty good to me. And if the talent pool for all of these jobs starts to grow because you don't need to be downtown anymore, who knows how that changes the landscape for first-time buyers and income revenue, like just revenue and all that stuff.
That's so interesting. Like, because I have thought about the whole idea that working from home is going to be, widely more used than it has been in the past in terms of office space and everything. But now that opens up the ability to not have to live close to where you work.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you tend to live in Toronto to experience Toronto. So whether that's, all of the kind of art scene and the galleries you can go to, or if you like the kind of the music aspect, or you like the fun bars, whatever that is, that's kind of why you live in Toronto, to be able to jump on that subway or the streetcar and go to those places. And if your rent and the cost of living is just so expensive, you don't have any money to save with to, eventually go somewhere else, or to go and enjoy any of the reasons that you're living in Toronto for in the first place.
Right.
Which, I mean, just kind of what's the point then? If you live in Toronto, but you can't go and do anything that you want to because you can't afford it, then for me personally, I don't see like the draw.
Right. Yeah. No, I can empathize with that entirely. And I think that young people, I mean, me included, like I think that our anxiety levels are way higher than they were in previous generations. I think that
Yeah.
we really have well, I mean, social media has changed everything, and what we can see and how we participate. It really creates this feel of anxiety and sometimes helplessness, and you really don't feel like you're getting ahead. You're living downtown, but you've got no money saved up, and it compounds on you, and it really it affects you. I mean, I feel like that. I feel like that once a week. And it's really, there's no right and wrong answers. I think that sometimes I just have to say to myself, don't take life too seriously sometimes. Like, you just gotta kind of roll with it and just have fun. And I mean, what I started to do was, it sounds, I don't know, what your listeners, how they engage with meditation, but I've started to do that recently in the last, I'd say, maybe 2 months, and it's really
Hmm.
helped me just relax and quote unquote live in the now, and not be
Yeah.
too worried about what's coming or what's happened, and just try and enjoy the moment. And I mean, that doesn't really help you too much with saving money or experiencing Toronto, but just maybe a different perspective on how to, get the most out of your experience living in Toronto or wherever you might be.
Oh, definitely. And as far as I know, you were saying that it's mostly a seller's market from what you've seen, as far as people, selling their homes, people purchasing homes or condos. Would that be the same with renting? Would you say that renters don't have a ton of power in the situation in Toronto?
They do now.
Yeah.
What's happened is, yeah, there's new Airbnb rules, and Airbnb is not allowed to operate at this time with COVID. So that's putting these landlords in a really tough spot, because what they've done is essentially, if you run an Airbnb, a successful Airbnb downtown, you're going to make double what you could make from just a renter that's renting on a 1 year term, on a 1 year lease
Interesting.
term. You can make a lot of money. If there's a Taylor Swift concert that comes into town, you've just got your Airbnb rate like triples. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
like they've developed their forecasting based on what their previous year's incomes are. So that's allowed them to leverage their property and go buy more. That's not going to happen anymore. So right now there's 700 one-bedroom apartments downtown Toronto for lease. And so that gives renters a lot of leverage, because they can just say, hey, why do I don't need to deal with you and your nonsense. I'm going to go to the guy down the hall who's got his place up for lease, and maybe he'll be a better landlord, and maybe he'll give me a better rate, and I can kind of shop these around a little bit.
Yeah.
So for a renter's standpoint right now, there's a lot more leverage
Yeah.
for the renter. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be that even what I've seen online is that there's a lot of furnished places for rent as well, which makes me think that those perhaps were Airbnbs, because the fact that someone is renting out their place fully furnished with dishes and a TV and all of that, it makes me think that maybe because of the Airbnb changes, that some of these people that are sitting on property just want to get it rented out.
Yeah, definitely. They're willing to they are willing to play ball with you, quote unquote. Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
So
totally. I mean,
anybody that's listening to this right now, sorry, Harris, I didn't mean
yeah,
to
yeah, no
cut you
sweat.
off there. That is maybe really starting to think that they want to move out. Although times are tough right now, would it be good to kind of jump on this with landlords? Maybe be willing to negotiate, having talked about the Airbnb situation.
From the renter's perspective, yeah, I think that yes, you'd have no problem going out right now and having a good negotiated lease. You can definitely you might be able to find a deal. It's every situation is totally different from the next. But yes, I think right now, if you were considering getting out of the house and renting a place downtown, right now is as good as I've seen it.
Wow. And would you recommend going with an agent when you're looking at renting, like going with a real estate agent?
It really depends. I honestly, my colleagues might hate me for this. I don't think so. I don't think that you do need an agent to go help you with the condo rental. You might need one for a house, just because condos, it's really easy to see what like what the last one sold for. Coming up with comparables to develop
Hmm.
value in your lease, that's really easy in the condo world, and it's probably a little bit less expensive if you go right to Kijiji and you can go find it yourself. That being said, I will warn you, There are scams out there through Kijiji, and there are other agents that post property on there. So at the end of the day, you might be dealing with a real estate agent regardless.
Mm-hmm.
I think the greatest thing about having a real estate agent is it's the trust and the value that they bring through trust and their brand. It's like, you know that they're not going to put you into a jam because their brand is totally reliant on your experience. Yeah.
It's peace of mind, I guess, as well.
It totally is. And we take care of everything. Like, you don't have to end up developing a tour and finding out where you have to go and where the lockbox keys are and organizing with the landlord. We do all of that for you, and you don't pay us a cent. It's all paid for by the landlord.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a big thing that people like a misconception is, I mean, I even have, women that are in their 50s ask me, so how do we pay you if we want to go buy a condo? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, you don't pay me anything. The sellers pay me everything. So when you go sell a condo, you're paying for the buyer's commission, the buyer's agent commission, and the seller's agent's commission. If Ryan, if you came up to me tomorrow and said, Harris, I want to go buy this place at 159 Wellesley. And you said, how do I
I like how you put me in the village.
Well, I
love how you put me in the gay village. No, I mean, hey, you never know, right?
Yeah, and I'm literally looking right up like north of like church right now, so it just came in my mind. But anyways, yeah. But if you wanted to buy that, you wouldn't have to pay me anything. There's no money being exchanged between you and I. My fee just comes from the seller.
Interesting.
Which is a total common misconception that a lot of young people might not know, and that might create a barrier for young people to reach out to me because they think they have to pay for my service, which they don't.
Would a landlord that's renting using an agent though increase the listing price, knowing that they're going to have to pay the agent as far as renting? Do you know?
Yes, it is, but it's not significant. It's pretty small. Like we ended up making as agents on a deal, we'll get paid half a month's rent. So that's what we'll get paid. So the landlord is giving 1 month rent to make sure that they've got a good quality tenant coming into their door.
I see. Okay. So it's not like it's split out over the term of the lease. Usually.
No, it's just paid up front. The landlord pays it. And right now, I mean, any landlord that posts a property without an agent, doesn't put on MLS, they're really doing themselves a disservice right now because there's so many 1-bedroom condos available for lease. MLS is really the premium platform for exposure. So if we were to go to sell a house, it's going to go on MLS. If you want to find a rental unit, it should go on MLS, because if you're a landlord, 1 month's rent really isn't a big deal. If you leave your place vacant for 3 months, there's your problem. I mean, you might as well pay the 1 month rental fee. You're going to end up netting more at the end of the day.
Wow. Harris, I mean, we could talk to you for hours. You're so interesting, and the way you explain things are so digestible. And that's what I like about your email newsletter that you send out as well. And, we've been talking a lot about how it can be tough for millennials to save to buy property, but at least there's people like you and real estate agents that are in their corner and ready and willing to help. So thank you for that. And if you don't mind, just sharing with our listeners where they can find more information on you, where they can subscribe to your newsletter, and maybe also your social media links, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my website is harrisbundy.com. And then my social accounts for real estate are Harris Bundy Real Estate. And then one that's a little bit more specific, it's called Canary Condo Living. And so that's a brand that I'm developing in the Canary District because it's a pretty new area. It's kind of like a Liberty Village of the East End. And there's a lot of planning being done down here. There's going to be a lot more infrastructure brought to the area, like Loblaws and Shoppers and stuff like that. We just lost Sidewalk Labs. I'm sure you guys have heard about that. Yeah. So that project just went belly up, and that's a stinker because that I thought brought a lot of value to this area. But regardless, it's a really cool place to be. And so I'm trying to really develop a brand in here. So that's Canary Condo Living. But for anyone that wants to get in touch with me and just wants to just talk real estate, absolutely, always, I'm here for you. Happy to talk. It's just Harris Bundy Real Estate. That's my Instagram handle. And if you just follow me and send me a note, then I can add you to my email list.
Just for everyone that's listening, that's Harris, Harris, Bundy, Bundy. And thanks again, Harris, for joining us.
Well, guys, thanks so much for having me. This was great. I really enjoyed talking to you both.
No, fantastic.
I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, not at all. And like I was saying earlier, the conversation of real estate and buying homes and renting can be daunting and overwhelming. And so it's nice to talk to someone that kind of levels it out, makes it make sense, and doesn't totally scare us completely.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, guys. And I hope it's that's the problem, is it can be really daunting, and sometimes I make it a little bit too complex the way that I explain it. So I really am working on making it a lot more simple in the way I explain things. So I'm happy that you guys got to you could digest it all and you thought it was appropriate for the podcast.
Of course, as our listeners know, you can follow us on Instagram at Is This Adulthood, or on Twitter, ITA_podcast, if you want to get in touch. And yeah, you were great, Harris. Hope you have a lovely rest of your week. And thanks again.
Thanks, Dirk.
Stay happy and healthy during this pandemic.
You too, Katie. You too. I'll see you at Foodland.
See you at Foodland.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.